I think there's two things that I'd like to draw to your attention when we're thinking about law and the limits of law and the limits of politics. How can you do the right thing by abusing law? In The Man for All Seasons, there's an exchange between William Roper and Thomas More. And William Roper says, what would you do to trap the devil? And William Roper says, yes, I'd cut down every law in England to do that. And Thomas More says, oh, and when the last law was down and the devil turned round on you, where would you hide, Roper? The laws all being flat. This country is planted thick with laws from coast to coast, man's laws, not God's. And if you cut them down, and you're just the man to do it, do you really think you could stand upright in the winds that would blow then? Yes, I'd give the devil benefit of law for my own safety's sake. It's really a very good quotation from A Man for All Seasons by Robert Bolt. And it's used almost directly in the film, if you remember. Now, if we then turn to an example of what it's like where the law has been cajoled into behaving for the political regime, where the law is at the behest of the political powers. Because we can see it very clearly in Russia, in modern Russia, in Putin's Kremlin. And Alexei Navalny faces having his sentence lengthened for doing what? For doing almost nothing. There was a man yesterday convicted, and his lawyer has had to flee for his life. Vladimir Kara was convicted, jailed for 25 years. For doing what? For being a journalist, for doing his job. And Vadim Prokhorov fled just before the verdict was announced. He said that, this is not the place to be a dissident or an activist, or indeed even to be a lawyer representing dissidents and activists, to face a huge jail term for spreading, quote, fake news about the war. It's disturbing. And by saying that we are going to decide which laws internationally and nationally we recognise as valid and which we don't, we're going to cherry pick the laws from the European Court of Human Rights. Now, that's not that's not an EU court. It's an international court that we helped to set up in Britain. And we're going to decide which of the pronouncements from the European Court of Human Rights we don't like. And we're going to ignore them in the interests of doing whatever good Suella Braverman decides we're going to do, in the interest of stopping the small boats, in the interest of doing what the majority of the country wants, she says. Well, first of all, I don't think it is the majority of the country. It might be the majority of a particular part of the Conservative Party. It might be the majority of a particular part of UKIP or the Reform Party. But I think we'd be hard-pressed to say that it's a majority of people in the country. It's actually not one of the priorities of the majority of people in the country. Though, yes, putting migrants in hotels, not processing them, that is something that has contributed to hostility to the other. Othering people who are vulnerable. Well, I don't think this is the right way forward. I think morally this is very, very dangerous. And I think we're going to find ourselves in a position where we simply do not have the moral superiority to be able to condemn countries like Putin's Russia, because we are planning to do pretty well the same sort of thing. We are planning to ignore international law. How can we accuse Russia of ignoring international law and vilify Russia for doing that when we do the same? Pause before we salute Suella Braverman's vicious, mad plans